welcome back to Fuck the Rules of Love. Today we are talking about all things why saying something feels risky. Now, that something is super vague in terms of the title of this episode, but what that something is, if you haven't gleaned already, is all about the hard conversations ultimately. The things that we don't like to talk about because it feels uncomfortable. It might lead to an argument. It might make someone else feel hurt. In this particular instance, that someone is absolutely your partner. So I want to break this down and give you a better understanding about why it's so difficult to have those conversations. Now, aside from the fact that, of course, you might start an argument or maybe you will upset somebody, but at the end of the day, we don't say something because at the core, we're just trying to avoid discomfort. We're trying to avoid feeling undesirable emotions. But whether we speak it or not, whether we behave differently or not, when we talk about energy, right? Like energy, you can't see energy. This is proven stuff that everything is energy. That includes your thoughts, your emotions, they all have a frequency of some kind. And when there are things that we're holding on to, that we're not speaking about, we're not communicating, we're not allowing ourselves to let go of, it is going to create a divide between you and your partner, whether you realize it or not. Because that unsaid thing is still there, even if you're really good at boxing it up and pushing it away or sweeping it under the rug. That's why you'll often find if you, from years ago perhaps, there was tension, conflict, whatever hurt between you and your partner, you may find yourself at times feeling like you can't move forward or let it go because perhaps you didn't speak your truth. Perhaps there's still niggly things that you haven't voiced. Now, you don't always need to voice everything. Okay, I am not an advocate of bringing everything that is wrong with your relationship, the problems you have with your partner, whatever it is. I am not an advocate of you bringing everything to him. I am a very big advocate of trying to address what you can on your own if it's not something that is make or break. Because the thing is, right, when a lot of women, and I've seen this time and time again, myself included, a lot of women, one of our self-protective mechanisms is to focus or hyper fixate on all the things our partner is doing wrong. So yes, whilst it might seem like a big deal, whatever this thing is or these things are that's bothering you that maybe you feel the need to talk about, but you have just been pushing aside because you're scared to, maybe not always beneficial to bring everything to your partner because your partner's going to continue to feel like he's never enough. And maybe he said that to you. Maybe he said, nothing I do is good enough for you. I've certainly heard that in the past from my own partner. So I'm a big advocate, like I said, of really trying to get very real with yourself and go, is this like a make or break situation? However, if something has occurred in the past and you are not addressing it and it is still somewhere, whether it's conscious or unconscious or in your subconscious mind, it's still there. It's still causing this divide between you. It needs to be addressed. Now, you may convince yourself that no, 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 Paige. No, no, no. It's really, I'm okay with said thing. But if something in particular popped into your head when I started talking about this, it's probably a good sign that that's the thing you should be talking about with your partner. That's the thing you should be saying and addressing. And whilst you may have this worst case scenario in your head, and if I do, XYZ will happen, chances are that's not what's going to happen, especially, this is the kicker, okay? Especially if you can be accountable and not spend the whole time blaming him. you address or, start the conversation, probably ideally from a place of, hey, do you have the time? Do you have the capacity to have a vulnerable chat? Start there. Okay, don't just bring it and maybe he's in the middle of gaming, maybe he's scrolling on his phone, maybe you need to get his undivided attention, and don't just plonk this on him. He doesn't have to have the conversation right now if he doesn't desire. So I really encourage you to definitely start with, hey, can we have a chat first? And then you share vulnerably, honestly. But it's not from a place of, you know what? I'm going to use James. I'm making this up, guys. Don't worry. This isn't actually a thing, but James, you are so shit at cleaning up after yourself. Now, this is a really mild example. Maybe the issue is something a lot bigger. And look, to be fair, it's just washing to me. Okay. Sometimes, okay, maybe it's a problem, but also it's just washing. But that's just my example I've chosen. It's the first thing that popped into my head. So, oh my God, you just never fucking clean up after yourself. And I'm so tired of it. I've told you time and, it stresses me out, or I shouldn't have to do it. You live here too. That is not the approach we want. Okay. So let's try it again. Hey, babe, do you have capacity for a chat? He says yes. Great. So I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable here. And I, it's hard for me to say this. I've been bottling up for a little while, but I know that it's not helping the situation. I find it so overwhelming and it's just so much on my nervous system when I continue to find your clothes on the floor time and time again. I'd be so grateful if you would please help me out and just put them in the basket or do a load of washing. Do you think you would be open to that? And then you let him speak, you let him share. He might get a little bit defensive. Obviously, I've used a really kind of mild problem, for lack of a better word. So if it's a more sensitive topic, chances are there may be some defensiveness. Now, I am really, really going to encourage you here to do your utmost to stay open because you're going to want to get defensive and shut down. But somebody has to lead, right? And what I mean by that is, and I'm not saying lead is in lead in the relationship and, be dominant or something. I just mean someone's got to go first. And if you sit there going, oh, he doesn't validate me, he doesn't see me, I'm going to ask, do you validate him? Do you see him? Are you hearing what he says, even if you don't agree? Because I have no doubt he doesn't always agree with you. And yet, chances are you still expect him to validate you, to hear what you have to say, and potentially even expect him to agree with you. That is not what a relationship is. Okay. You're a partnership, but that does not mean that he has to do what you want all the time, the way you want it on your terms. That's not how life works. And that is not how a thriving symbiotic relationship works. And for me, that's kind of the goal, right? I want to feel like we are a team, and sometimes that means compromise. And frequently, well, maybe not frequently, but it absolutely means that we need to also be having these uncomfortable conversations that we are very likely just sweeping under the rug because we're scared. Because we're, going by the past, it always leads to an argument. But what if it led to an argument in particular because of your approach? Because you didn't take accountability, you didn't share any vulnerability. It is very easy to be like, you did this, versus I'm feeling a kind of way by your actions. When you lean into the emotion of it, chances are you start to lean into more vulnerability. But vulnerability it's scary, right? Because it leaves us open to criticism, rejection, an argument. It can potentially lead to those undesirable experiences or emotions. And our brain does its it does a job. I don't always think it does a great job at trying to keep us quote unquote safe, because it tries to keep us safe from things that aren't life threatening. It's just uncomfortable. And so it's almost like we have to work against this like biological mechanism. this computer programming that just is how our brain works. And to try and not fight against it, but I suppose when we are trying to create new neurons, new pathways in our brain, when we are trying to do things differently, it's challenging and it requires repetition. So I don't expect you to nail this. Yeah, like I can be triggered and bring things to my partner, and I can project and I can get defensive. I can be a bit unkind. My approach isn't always soft and wonderful. But if you don't try to make some change, then nothing is ever going to change. And so if you're anticipating the same outcome as last time, that's why I'm trying to encourage you to see yourself perhaps a little more clearly. Like maybe, just maybe, you entered that conversation whilst maybe you thought you said it quite kindly. Maybe your energy, maybe your nervous system was still dysregulated, and maybe underneath in the undercurrent, you were still pissed off. You were still like, fuck this guy. So underneath that's what's going on, but you're like, but it's fine, but like it's not fine. That's what he's feeling, even whether he's perceiving that consciously or not. He's like, bullshit, it's not fine. There's no understanding here. You're not open to what I have to say. And we need to be, because sometimes hearing his perspective can be, if you allow it, and can be enough to just go, oh shit, okay, I didn't like what you did, but I also didn't see it from your perspective. And that really helps me. Helps me have a better understanding that the way I was seeing it through my biased eyes isn't how you meant it. Okay, cool. Now I can let it go. The tricky part about this is that our ego loves to cling to our stories, because what if we let them go, then we open ourselves up to our partner, we create more connection, more intimacy often, and then the what ifs come up. What if he breaks my heart? So, that's why we put them in the doghouse in our head over and over and over again. They're the problem, so that we don't have to let them get too close. It's why we don't have the hard conversations as well at the core, because if we do, we create more of that connection again. That divide between us, it closes. So instead, most of us go about our lives in these relationships. Oh, we've been together for 20 years. Do you want a medal? Because I'm like, that's fantastic. But how much of those 20 years has been bullshit, has been fake? Has you been performing? How real have you been that whole time? Or have you just both of you just been settling? Like, that's the work that I am about, is like, no, I am not here for good. I am not here for good enough. I am here for fucking mind blowing, for fucking exceptional. That's my standard. That's not my standard 100% of the time, but you bet your fucking ass I want to be able to reach that in moments, in seasons of our relationship. I refuse to settle for just good enough, because everybody else is, and they're just going about their lives like robots. And so this podcast is like, you can use this as a line in the sand, as your inspiration, as your fuel, your rocket fuel to make rapid changes in your life. Not even necessarily rapid, but make profound changes in your life if you so desire. Or you can continue going about your life the way you have been. But I promise you, if you are listening to this, it's because there's more available to you. And that's not to say that you even need to be able to access that by working with me, but perhaps there's something here for you, maybe something small, maybe something really big. It doesn't matter. You are here for a reason, so trust that. I actually have a tattoo here. Those watching on YouTube can see this, but it says follow your journey. The irony of it, it's not right. It was meant to say trust your journey. Don't ask me how it happened. It was not the tattoo artist's fault. It was mine. Follow your journey still made sense. So it didn't click until a month after I'd gotten it done. But it's the same kind of concept. Trust your journey. Trust where you're at. Trust that everything happens for a reason. Or in this case, follow your journey. You are exactly where you're meant to be. And I am a really, really big believer that, like I've said, there is more available to us, but that requires radical self-honesty and accountability sometimes. And in relationship, it's required a lot. And sometimes that doesn't feel good. But if you are willing to be humbled even a little bit, I promise you, you will look at your relationship and life in a completely new way. And it is game changing. That was a really beautiful closing of this episode. Thank you so much for being here. If you loved it, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with your friends, share it on Instagram, Facebook, tag me. I would love that. And I will see you all on the next episode. Ciao.